Welcome, everyone, to a special Ken Harbaugh Show Substack Live. I'm joined by my friend, fellow vet, and disability advocate Nick Pero for an urgent conversation about the Trump administration's looming assault on disability rights. A lot of vets in that category. On June 18th, the DOJ quietly issued a memo aimed at gutting the 1999 Olmstead Decision, which ended forced institutionalization and guaranteed people with disabilities the right to live in their own communities. Bloomberg reports that Stephen Miller was behind this. It all fits a pattern criminalizing mental illness while branding dissent as pathology. And this rollback could gut VA mental health access for outspoken veterans. Nick is director of framing at Disability Community for Democracy and creator of Sick of This Shit publications. Nick, welcome. Bring us up to speed. What do we need to know?
Ken, thanks for that great introduction and really good summary of the issue. And I really appreciate you having me on for this discussion today. I think it's a really important one. So you summed it up really well of what's been going on is the DOJ is trying to take away rights of folks with disabilities and then use that as the pretext to take away rights from those who dissent. And it fits a pattern with this administration. So they've started with criminalizing homelessness, criminalizing substance abuse, then doing studies into Trump derangement syndrome to try and get it codified as a
Wait, hang on a
disorder.
second. They are studying TDS, Trump
Yes.
derangement syndrome, which
Yes.
I suffer from.
Yes.
They are
Yes.
studying this. They are spending taxpayer dollars to try to turn this into something that can, I guess, in extremis, institutionalize someone.
Yes, that is exactly what they're doing. So last year in 2025, I believe it was a House committee, they put aside actual taxpayer funds to study and try and codify Trump derangement syndrome within the DSM so that it could be labeled as an actual disorder. Because, for some reason, it's a disorder to think that fascism is bad and that authoritarianism
For
is wrong.
for the uninitiated, the DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Is that right? Well,
I believe
in
so.
more layman's terms, it's what healthcare workers, psychiatrists, physicians, psychologists used to diagnose mental disorders.
Yes, and the DSM covers things like autism. It covers things like ADHD, all the way to narcissism, and eventually, possibly Trump derangement syndrome.
TDS.
But it's also been used in the past in the U.S. to weaponize mental health and weaponize health. In the old Confederacy, there were laws for slaves who ran away, and they termed it as a disorder. That you would run away from your slavery, and the punishment would be that they'd cut off your toes so you couldn't do it again. We have protest psychosis in the U.S., so we have a history of criminalizing dissent when it's uncomfortable for the federal government. And this is just another attempt in that line to silence dissent, keep people in line, make those of us like you and me who use the VA and other services afraid to use them because our mental health may not be as protected as we think it is. And our data and information could easily be used against us in this time as a way to claim we are deranged because we don't like Trump.
What is Stephen Miller's interest in this? I thought his beat was immigration and making minorities and immigrants to this country terrified. I guess he's expanding his portfolio, but that should alarm anyone. Anything that Stephen Miller touches is a five-alarm fire.
Well, in the Stephen Miller case in all of this, he is a eugenicist, and eugenics is a pseudo-racist science anyway, and is a racist science. I'll just call it. It's a racist science, and it attacks anyone who's in a minority community or outside of this tiny, tiny, tiny little sliver of what is deemed as humanity at that time in their eyes, be it white, be it whatever. It's no longer strictly like about black versus white or white versus brown or whatever BS racists want to go at. It is these people who think they can control the world and dominate everybody else versus us. So Stephen Miller, his hand in this is he hates anybody that's not within his small sphere of perfection, because he is just a horrible, horrible human being. And this is a way to get around and make dissent criminalized much easier. His goal is to silence people. His goal is to make it as uncomfortable to be loud as possible. And because the disability community is also the largest minority community in the world, it's an easy target for him to go after because we're often forgotten. We're often left behind in discussions of civil rights. It took almost 20 years after the civil rights movement to get disability civil rights put into place. So we're an easy target because we're the first domino to fall a lot of the time.
What motivated the 1999 Olmstead decision? I mean, I would imagine in this community that was a landmark, but it was arrived at after, and I know this to be true, decades, probably centuries of horrific treatment and marginalization and the ignoring of rights that were already enshrined, but they were just ignored because you didn't have a code to point to.
Yeah, so the 1999 Olmstead decision came about after two women in Georgia sued the state after being held past their release. Their provider and them had said, "We're good to go. You are ready and fit to go back into your community with care." And the state of Georgia said, "No, no, thanks. We're gonna forcibly keep you in this institution." And these institutions, even in and outpatient services, they were being forced to stay well past what their prescribed care was. And they sued. And it took almost 3 years for them to get to the Supreme Court for this case to be decided. And since 1999, all we have had is this decision and no codification into law of the rights that were outlined in the decision. So what the
Yeah.
decision actually did was it ended state level and territory level forced institutionalization of patients. And that ended discrimination practices and allowed for the least restrictive in-home, in-community environments that you could possibly get for your services. Doesn't mean that you are required to be in a non-institutionalized setting, like inpatient and outpatient services are still there. The VA has them. We use them at the VA. People use mental health services where you go into an institution for a little while, but you can come out of it. You have the choice to leave. They can't just hold you there. With the Olmstead decision possibly being rolled back, and so there are no laws that they're rolling back. It is just a DOJ memo saying this is now going forward in any case related to Olmstead practices. We're not gonna view it as the way that the Supreme Court said it was 27 years ago. And that's a huge issue because there are states like Texas who are suing to end Section 504 practices for our children in schools, which feeds into the special ed to prison or special ed to institutionalization pipeline. And there are no longer institutions to handle people because we dismantled them. We ended the institutionalization practices, and there's nowhere to put people in institutions unless you want to put them into warehouses or prisons. And that's where that would lead.
I don't want to sound conspiratorial here, but does the massive momentum for privatization of prisons and other warehousing facilities, does that play in here at all? Do you think there is a lobbying effort? Because you know how much money these
Yes.
companies are spending to influence the federal government. Are they thinking about Olmstead, or is that just is it is it marginal in terms of their lobbying considerations?
This route that they're taking was laid out in Project 2025. So, yes,
Really?
this is exactly their plan. They are using this as a pretext to be able to do mass incarceration of dissenters. There are warehouses being built and purchased around the nation at alarming rates that are being converted into holding facilities that are too many for the immigrants that are the problem. And we've been seeing this over months and over the last years is detention centers are going up everywhere. And in the and earlier this year and last year they had the EO that came out, the executive order on criminalizing homelessness, and they swept states and areas like DC of their homeless populations. We haven't really heard where those folks went or what happened to them or where they're being housed now. And if you don't think a eugenics regime with a very strict plan on implementing Nazi-esque and Confederate policies back onto the US, then we then yes, the answer is yes. Like they are going to use these places. And it's not, yeah, my friend Naida Green in the chat, she's the CEO and founder of Disability Community for Democracy, and she's been helping me put together the scripts. The legal team and the policy team at Disability Community are incredible and are doing really hard work to get this information out there, because most people don't know this is even happening. Most people don't even know the impacts of what taking away Olmstead would actually do. And using that tool is, yes, they want to mass institutionalize people. They've been
You
they've been displaying that openly, at least in my mind, for a long time now.
you made the comparison explicit. And I know your organization, and I see Nate in the chat. I know Disability Community for Democracy is careful about this, but there is a history here of
Yes.
labeling people not just in in paperwork and in medical offices, but putting pink triangles on shoulders, criminalizing people's sexual orientation. That's a specific reference. Um, and yeah, I think maybe it's time to make that comparison explicit as you just did. And I don't want to get you in trouble with your organization, but tell us about the history of this kind of practice and the roadmap that people like Stephen Miller have.
Yeah, and I don't think I will get any flack from Naida or the organization for any of this discussion. We talk about it a lot. Um, it's the history of slavery in this country. It is the history, a lot of our history in the U.S., unfortunately. And it's a history we have to reconcile with and face. Is that I don't want to be a nation known for continuing eugenics practices. Um, and so I use these words very deliberately. Eugenics is a US fascistic pseudoscience that pseudo racist science that has caused a lot of harm. It influenced Nazism. We influenced Nazism across the board. Like we influenced the fascistic movement in a lot of ways because of our slavery practices and the way that we've treated people, ugly laws. And the idea that there are people lesser than isn't a distinctly American thing. We just exported it really well.
Can you explain ugly? Because that sounds like a casual term, but it's a real thing. I've seen it
yes.
pop up in the
Yeah.
chat.
Yeah, so ugly laws, I'll give a brief history of it. I'm not the expert on this topic. Naida is much better at discussing this area, and the history of why we chose a certain name for the action items that we're doing, which is say no to Crip Crow, because it hits home really really hard for people. You hear that and you sort of cringe a little bit, and that's sort of the point. So ugly laws, or unofficially unsightly beggar ordinances, were a series of U.S. municipal laws that made it illegal for people with visible disabilities or disfigurements to appear in public. Basically saying if
Jesus.
you look ugly, you can't be out in public in their eyes. If you look a certain way, if you have Down syndrome, that would be an ugly law. If you have elephantitis, like if you have any of these diseases where we turn people into circus freaks or carnies or shit like that in our history, those were because of ugly laws.
Can I make a modern comparison? It
Yeah.
was a comment that Trump made, and I think within earshot of Millie, about not wanting disabled veterans near him. And it
Yes.
was a disabled veteran who was singing the national anthem at an event. And somebody in the chat, please remind me which event it was. And the president said, I don't want an amputee at any of my events going forward. And it sounds like it's of a piece of these ugly laws, and that's who's running the government now.
Yeah. Well, most people think of Donald Trump as like he was a Democrat, then he's a Republican. Donald Trump has always been the KKK candidate, and the KKK laws were influenced by the old Confederacy and the ugly laws. He has always been the KKK's platform, the KKK's candidate. And I don't say that lightly. He follows their platform almost to a T. And he always has. He was friends with David Duke. Like the fact that we even allowed this individual to say any of those things is appalling. And the legacy of the ugly laws ended with the ADA. Like that was 1990 was when ugly laws really kind of came to an end. Yeah, Donald Trump's dad was part of the KKK. Like we have to remember that. These are KKK, these are Confederacy laws. Um and these are older than Nazism. Like we use the comparison of Nazism because it is very in your face to the world, but we don't ever compare it to our own faults. And this isn't about German history. This is American history. And this is American present is, oh, sorry. Thank you, Naida. The ugly laws ended in 1974 and ended with the Section 504, which allowed students to be in their classrooms and be in lesser restrictive services. Texas is trying to get rid of Section 504, which would then be a pretext to bringing back ugly laws again, because we're ugly. We're ugly in capitalism. We're ugly in their eyes because we will never produce in the way that the capitalistic system requires so that we can be good little serfs and make pittance while they make billions and trillions. And Olmstead was the next logical step in ending ugly law practices, was the ending of discrimination, segregation, and forced institutionalization. And now we're stepping back. We're not even stepping back. They're taking like a sledgehammer or a battering ram and just pulling forward to bring us backwards, because this is a regime of regression versus progression. No matter what you think of conservative versus liberal, at least there was an underlying truth that we tried to progress in some way. Regression is what they're after. And so we're fighting back against it. We're trying to fight back against it with our action campaign, which is a coordinated effort with Sick of the Shit Publications and Disability Community for Democracy to say no to Crip Crow, because we have a power to actually say no and use our voices before it's too late. Because I got a tattoo of a Star of David on my forearm in a very specific spot because I was never going to let somebody put a number on my forearm in that place like they did in the Holocaust, because that is where ugly laws lead to.
Can you explain more about Say No to Crip Crow, where the name comes from, and what people in the chat and who watch this afterwards can do to be part of this pushback?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Ken, thank you for having me on to be able to talk
Of course.
about this and discuss this today. So I'll drop a link in the chat, and Naida Green has been dropping a link in the chat too. Is we have put together a web page called broadbanner.com/crip-crow, which is where we're laying out exactly what people can do. And what that is, this is a coordinated effort that's going to take hopefully weeks to months, but it will realistically, it's going to be years of us fighting to ensure that these rights are codified unless there's enough forward pressure now to make sure that everybody knows about it and everybody is involved. So the Crip Crow webpage, what it is it lays out quick background on what's going on. We have two concrete policy asks that we're going to be working to get put into chambers for both houses of Congress if possible, and be able to try and work this session to change and codify law, because we want to get the Olmstead decision codified into the Americans with Disabilities Act, Section 2, and have it as a right, a codified right that is not just on the whim of a Supreme Court decision, because we know how stable Supreme Court decisions are in this US, in our current environment right now. And so we're trying to guarantee funding for state level and territory levels. And we're trying to codify digital accessibility as part of our provider participation conditions for Medicare and Medicaid, to expand on the rights that we already have and then codify them without anything else being added in. We don't want to add a bunch of other garbage that people will be like, oh, we want to take from this and do this. No. Two easy things, two small asks that can be put into either a reconciliation bill or just put forward as part of a amendment to the ADA itself directly, and just have that one piece of legislation done. And so what we're asking people to do is use the pre-made scripts that we have put together, add on to them with your personal stories. We have phone call scripts. We have email template scripts. We have 3 different scripts. They are customizable based on your zip code. And so we have a lot of tools that make it very easy for you to do daily action calls. Is it takes 2 to 3 minutes to call. All you have to do is call. All you have to do for step 1 is call, and continue to call and pressure. And then we're asking if you know that your representative or senator has somebody directly in their family with a disability, to let us know, to tell us who they are so that we can speak with them too, because we know this is going to take a joint effort in this House and Congress. In Senate, it has to. If we want to get it through reconciliation, we have to have 10 Republicans sign on to this, which we can do. The Republicans are responsible for the ADA. George H.W. Bush signed the ADA into law, saying it was one of his most important bills he has ever signed into law. His son updated the ADA. 2 conservative administrations, Republican administrations, got the ADA through. I think we could do it even with this one. The hard part is we have lost a powerful unknown ally to us that could have been able to help bring this forward, which was Lindsey Graham. I didn't know about some of the things behind the scenes that he had been responsible for pushing forward. Is we need to find someone who is willing to champion this issue, no matter what we think about other issues that they have in their bag, because this is a concerted effort to get this through and across the line. Part of that effort is we're also interviewing candidates. So there's a couple prongs to this. Is citizens, all of us, we need to be involved. We need to be calling and letting our reps and senators know, you need to codify these rights into law. Here's exactly what you want. Here's how you can do it. It's really this easy. Here's why it impacts me. And everybody in this country knows somebody with a disability. And if you don't,
Yep.
you aren't paying attention enough to the people around you, and you need to start paying attention more. The next step
Yep.
is we want to get folks running for office behind this idea of codifying Olmstead into law, because we know that this Congress is probably not going to pass it. No matter what, we could probably get it in the committee. We know we may not win on this Congress. But come November, come January, when they're sworn in, we can have a whole new Congress that would be willing to hammer this home right away. And we've been speaking to candidates, any candidate that we can, to get them on board with this. The Courage for Democracy candidates are on board with us, every single one that we've spoken to. I've reached out to some in my area who I'm going to try and follow up with again. I would love to get folks like Fred Wellman on board with this, because I know Fred has disabilities himself and is a veteran, and the more concerted effort we can do across the board, the better. I want folks like Hallie Schaffner talking about this, because Tom Cotton would have the power to do something in the Senate, but he won't. And if we can get everyone on board talking about it now, this impacts all of us. And it doesn't matter what your political ideology is. And if folks like Amanda Pushkek out of Alabama 4 can talk to her constituents, conservative, MAGA, and progressive alike, and get them on board discussing this because they're all afraid of what the ramifications of the Olmstead memo being taken away are, we can have a coalition of millions. And that's
Yeah.
how we win.
Nick, we got to leave it there. Lots of great comments in the chat. We're following Josh Turek, of course. And Nieda's dropped the link multiple times, maybe one more time while we wrap it up. There we go. Nick, where can people follow you? Because if you're not following Nick yet, make sure you smash that subscribe button to a Substack. But where else are you online, Nick?
You can follow me here on Substack as either at Nick Perro, Sick of This Shit Publications. You can find my other publication, Broadbanner Media. And the big one right now really is go to broadbanner.com/crip-crow. There is There's a stay informed section where you can sign up to get information emails. We will be putting out emails as we get updated pieces to the webpage, if there are new campaigns that we're doing. But the big one, follow me here on Substack at Nick Perro for Sick of the Shit Publications.
Awesome.
And
Thanks.
and also follow at Disability Community for the Disability Community for Democracy, so that you can continue getting updates, great interviews, and series coming out from there as well.
Great. Nick, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for everyone who joined in the chat, and good luck. We'll be tracking it.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate you.
You bet.